Now we move on quickly to finish off to the issue of real politics and ethics in politics, because most of these arguments that we find online and in person, they are ethical arguments. Okay, the rule is on not being ethical, the rule is on not acting correctly, the rule is on not doing this, the rules are... Politics and ethics are not the same thing. And if you insist every time on enforcing ethical standards to politics, you will always be at grievance with the leaders. It's just the way it is. Aristotle gives an example. It is not always the same thing to be a good man and a good citizen. One is a political status. A citizen is a political you're a political entity within the governance, a citizen. But as a man is a personal thing, is a spiritual state. Being a good man and a good citizen are not the same thing. Being a good man and a good leader are not the same thing. Yeah? Realpolitik. This is where the Umayyads shine. They outshine. Their ability to apply policy and to pursue rulings, not necessarily based on moral or ethical considerations, but based on practical considerations. Realpolitik. It's one of the realities of life. Okay, do we like it? Do we have to subscribe to it? Do we have to endorse it? No. But we have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge it. It's just the reality of politics and the reality of men, which is why the Sunni scholars acknowledge it and accept it, because without of this, a greater harm comes about. A greater harm comes about. Abdullah ibn Umar understood. And in some of the narrative, he talks to Ibn Zubayr and he accepts, yes, I know Yazid isn't the best, but we do not want to create greater harm for the Ummah by rejecting the bay'ah to Yazid. So the greater good was in complying and remaining united. When Abdullah ibn Zubayr dies and his head is severed, his body is crucified, Abdullah ibn Umar goes to Mecca and he passes his body and says to him, you're a good man, a righteous man. But I told you this is where it was going to end. I warned you. It could have only ended this way. Despite your good intentions and your good will, this was the only outcome of such a decision. And I say to you again today in 2024, if you insist on taking that path, we've never seen a difference. We've never seen a different outcome. We've never seen a different outcome. It's just the way of politics and politicians and leaders. Governance is not given away for free. Don't expect somebody in power to give you authority or to relinquish authority just because you want them to be ethical about it. Yeah, it's just not the way it is, Brother Oliver.
Cool. I have a quick question. I understand to accept that a ruler, a modern day ruler is never going to be truly just or whatever. Our model is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My question would be then, in our way, yeah, we have to give them exceptions and be practical, but in the eyes of in the Sunni tradition, do they almost get exceptions in the eyes of Allah on Yom Qiyamah?
That is between, yeah. So that's where we yeah, exactly. So that's beyond us, When Al-Hajjaj was dying and the ulama were making dua against him, they wanted this guy to die upon the path he lived, not to make tawbah. They were happy for him to die in that position. Hajjaj made a very strange statement. He turned to I think it was Hassan al-Basri, one of the major scholars at the time, said to him, is it true that they pray for my downfall in this hour of need? And he said, they're not lying. It's not like they're lying. So Hajjaj made a prayer, a strange prayer. Ya Allah, it has become apparent that your slaves almost doubt your mercy. Show them that you're merciful by forgiving me. It's not in our control to decide who Allah forgives. It's not within us to decide what happens to people after they die. And it's a complicated issue because look, the civil wars that happen within Muslims, we can't reconcile that. How can two Muslim armies fight each other? 70,000 die in one battle, 20,000 die in the other battle. They can't all go to Jannah, or can they? And so the Sunni tradition tries to reconcile. Yeah, they'll go to Jannah. But we know the hadith, when two Muslims fight each other, the one killed, the one killing, go to Jahannam. That's beyond the scope of history, but it's a difficult thing to come to terms with. So the same with the leadership. The same with the leadership. I think we have to accept that unless we're willing to pay the price, Al-Hussein paid the price, Abdullah ibn Zubair paid the price. Unless we're willing to pay the price, we have to just, if we are Sunni in that school, in that camp, we have to follow that guide, that ruling and guidance. It's for the greater good. It's for the greater good. Let's conclude, inshallah. I know I've run over, but I want to just put in there a few more concepts for you to read while they're reading. The idea that a ruler can be ethical and moral and just is almost a utopian concept. Aristotle writes about the philosopher king. The philosopher king, such a rare individual in history that possesses power and might, but also virtue in philosophy. Philosophy for them is spirituality or knowledge of the unseen. That's the equivalent for them. So he says this philosopher king phenomena is a rarity. It's not the standard. It's not the standard. Don't expect them to have virtue and justice and piety and benevolence and also power and authority and politics. It's a rarity. So it talks of the theoretical ruler. It refers to the theoretical ruler. Here we have examples. Akosha the Great. We have Marcus Aurelius. To an extent, Alexander, who wasn't virtuous, but to an extent he was a philosopher. Okay, it's a rarity. In other words, don't expect this to be the standard. Do not expect this to be the standard. It's a rarity. In the Islamic tradition, we have Prophet Dawood, Prophet Sulaiman, Prophet Talut, Dhul Qarnayn. They were prophets. It's not the standard. The standard is the opposite. People in power are more inclined to corruption. That's the standard. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say to you here is that if you have a very principled or an idealistic perspective of leadership, you need to realize that's a very, very exceptional state. It's not the standard. It's not the standard. Which is why the traditional Sunni perspective is we don't apply that as a primary. It's not a condition that they be righteous. Because if we insist on that, the harm is far greater than the greater good for society. But again, speak to scholars and find out what they say to you, inshallah. So that's available in the book which I'm going to share with you now, in the Republic, Plato's Republic. So more about the concept of the philosopher king. It's very interesting, by the way, very interesting. Plato's Republic. He talks about this pariah, effectively, this rarity, not pariah, but this rarity amongst kings. Also the rulership of a nation. Thomas Hobbes, one of the greatest philosophers in Western tradition. Leviathan, read that book. I mean, it's not, the Muslims are not the first ones to come up, the Sunni Muslims, with this political theory. Many others who came before us came to the conclusion already. You cannot have these virtues in a ruler and still have a good ruler and an effective ruler. There is a balance here, okay? The greater good. Leviathan, in a very short, concise summary, it tells you about the necessity of having a ruler and to obeying the ruler because of the greater good for society and the contract for obeying the ruler. And when is it right for the ruler, for the subjects to disobey the ruler, if at all? And so it's a great book for political theory to read it, okay? If you want to get into that as well. But within the Muslim tradition, we have the Book of Governance for Siyasat Nama, effectively, by Nizam al-Mulk, sorry. It's a book, okay? It's not going to give you everything, but it's going to give you enough if you want political theory and to look at the actual how politics works in a kingdom, a Muslim kingdom. That's a book worthy of reading. Nizam al-Mulk was one of the greatest minds in Islamic history, one of the greatest minds. And the book that I have utilized for this presentation is Muawiyah, the Restorer of Muslim Faith. Okay, so the title is very evocative, very provocative actually, but it's done so for a reason, to entice you to read. Okay, not to be offended, to read. And in this book, Aisha Bioli makes an effort to advocate on behalf of Muawiyah and his position amongst the Muslim rulers as a virtuous ruler. It's a book worth of reading, whether you agree or not. Expand the mind a bit beyond what you're used to hearing. And then Abu al-Ala al-Mawdudi. He's very famous. It's an English translation. I don't have knowledge of Urdu, but his very famous book on Khilafah and kingdoms, in which he criticizes Banu Umayyah. The English version is available here. And it's interesting because one of the only contemporary Sunni scholars, one of the only, there are a few others, but one of the few who has the courage to stand up and say that the Umayyads were not necessarily the most exemplary, and gives evidences and gives his narrative, is Abu al-Ala al-Mawdudi. So that's a book you want to read into if you want to know a bit more about the actual politics of Banu Umayyah.
Welcome to HistoryYoon, the world's leading online learning platform specializing in Islamic history. To discover the HistoryYoon mobile app and participate in regular live and interactive seminars and tune in directly from your handset from anywhere in the world. Enjoy instant access to a growing catalog of on-demand streaming content exclusive to the platform, accessible from a variety of devices including desktops, tablets, and cell phones. Connect instantly with our global community of history enthusiasts via our private community forum. To find out more about our online history programs and resources, visit our website today at www.historyyoon.com.